Hi everyone, welcome to today's session. We'll start the session in next 5 minutes. We're waiting for other people to join. Until then, I request you to hold on in the Zoom room. If you can hear me, please drop a yes message in the chat box so we can understand that we are audible enough and we can run the session smoothly. Hello everyone. We'll start the session in the next 2 minutes. If I'm audible, please drop a yes message in the chat box so we can run the webinar smoothly. I request everyone to be active. Please drop a yes message in the chat box. That's awesome. I got a couple of replies. Okay. I want everyone to be active in the session. So here we go. We are all set to start this amazing session. So hello and welcome to an extraordinary session where you will get a introduction and steps to follow if you're planning to study a PhD degree abroad. So before getting started, I'll just give a small introduction about Galvanize and what we do. So as you can see on the screen, we change lives. We are the trusted partners to fulfill your study abroad dreams. So as you can see, we help with end-to-end personalized solutions for students and working professionals who are aspiring to pursue a global degree abroad. Right from your test preparation, we help with your SAT, GRE, TOEFL, IELTS. Up next with your admission counseling, which plays a major role to get a admit into a top university abroad. Then we help with education loan, forex services, and other student insurance services. The team is managed and founded by alumni of Stanford, IIT Madras, and IIM Ahmedabad. Students from 65 plus countries have chosen Galvanize for their degree abroad journey. Right from Afghanistan, Bangladesh, you name the country, and we have students preparing with us. We have helped students to reach 1,000 plus universities across 18 plus countries: US, UK, Canada, Australia, Germany, you name the country, and we are here to help you out. We have a worldwide user base, 1 million plus users from 195 plus countries, with a global rating of 4.7 out of 5. You can see our admissions and test prep feedback on Quora. I'll be sharing the link in a while. Up next, presenting you the host for the day, we have Dr. Jayanti Ramakrishnan, who is a global admissions head at Galvanize Global Education and also leads the servicing team. She has been graduated with a from University of Tennessee with a PhD degree. At Galvanize, she closely works with the editing and the strategy team to ensure that students are getting the best deal possible. Having studied in the US herself, she has first-hand experience of what universities consider a good application. First impressions matter more than you realize. Admissions game, and she will help you to make the best first impression with a stellar application. Over to you, Jayanti ma'am.
Hi everyone. Thank you, Sahil, for the introduction. Hello everyone, and welcome to the session. I'm glad that all of you took some time out to join us today. So, without any delay, let me go ahead and start with the session, and then we can talk more as we go through the session. Okay, so all of you here are here today to understand about the PhD process, what the process is in various countries, what you should do as a student, and things like that. So I will be going into a lot of details about many of those things. Broadly, I will be talking about what is a PhD, what is the destination you can choose, what are the intake seasons, requirements, timelines, and so on. In addition to all of this, I will also be talking about a few points that I myself have, gathered over the years of doing my PhD as well as working with other students and their experiences. So I will talk to you about those things as well. So let's go ahead and start. And during the session, if you have any questions, you can type them in the chat box. I will either take them up during the session as a break or, at the end of the session. Okay, so what is a PhD? So I'm assuming that since you guys have taken the time to attend the session today, you have some idea on what a PhD is, or you may be thinking about doing a PhD, or you have already decided that you're going to go for a PhD degree abroad. Okay, so as you may already know, a PhD is the highest degree level achievable at any university. It basically says that you have spent enough time doing research on a specific topic. You have spent a lot of time doing the groundwork on what is needed, what is not needed, how it can be used, the potential uses, and things like that. You have done a complete, thorough research on that topic, and you have also presented your research and findings in front of an expert community, who have then decided that you whatever work you have done is substantial amount of work, and they have then conferred the degree upon you. So that is basically a gist of what a PhD degree is. It is completely research oriented degree, and it is not a degree that you can just say that achieve it in 1 year. On if normally it takes about 3 to 5 years, depending on how much you have already done, and of course your expertise level and things like that. So I always tell the students that a PhD degree is not a race, it's a marathon. It takes time. You have to put in the effort and take the time and spend to complete it. Once you have your PhD degree, you can pursue an academic career, you can go into the research field, you can even go into the industry. So the options are there are a lot of options once you finish your PhD degree. Okay. Now, why would you consider studying a PhD abroad and why not, in your home country? Now, what we have observed is that in the Western countries and the other countries, advanced countries, there are world class research facilities. Since I just talked about how a PhD is a very research oriented degree, obviously you want to do the degree in a university where you have access to cutting edge labs, you have libraries, technologies. You want to do it in universities which are well funded, so that your program, your research is also funded. You also get the necessary funds to carry out the experiments, to carry out the research, and so on. You also get exposed to global research networks by going to an international university. What happens is you get to work with top researchers from different countries, because like we have always seen, for example, in the US, there are a lot of professors, faculty, postdoctoral students, PhD students, international students. So that gives you the exposure to work with people from different countries, and that also widens your worldview. Also, there is a lot of exchange of knowledge that happens, so that really opens your door to future academic and industrial collaborations as well. Like I said, if you go into a very well established university, into a very well established program, there are your PhD is very often funded. That means you are not paying any penny from your pocket to do your PhD. The funding that is available from the university, like in the form of a research assistantship or a teaching assistantship or a fellowship, is often covers your tuition fees, as well as it gives you a stipend every month which takes care of your living expenses. So that is why it is always better to go to universities which are well funded and where the options are more. And the interesting thing is sometimes you're so well funded by the university or the program, or the university is so well funded that they even take care of things like conference travels and those kind of things for their students. Now, the research, most of the universities in the world where a PhD degree is offered, they have a very research focused environment. And the programs are developed in such a way that it encourages students to do research. They have the freedom to choose their own research projects, because that is what the whole PhD is about. It is about you understanding what you want to do, and you guiding and making your own path. So then, many of the universities and programs give you that freedom that you choose your research program, you choose the research where you want to do research. Of course, you have guidance from a supervisor who may be, doing research on a similar on the same project, but you may be able to choose your own path. Now, in addition to that, many universities, for example, UC Berkeley, they have special programs where they teach their PhD students to about grant writing, about research methods, and things like that. Many universities actually have that. I just gave you one example because these are all skills that you need to develop once you have finished your PhD. If you decide to go into academia after you finished your PhD, you want to make sure that you know how to write grants, because getting grants from different organizations, different labs, government agencies is something that you have to do on a regular basis if you are in academia to keep your research funded. So, how do you write these grants? These are some of the things that are actually taught as part of your PhD program in universities abroad. Now, other thing is, of course, the international experience. I talked about this, living away from your home country. It builds adaptability and independence, because at your home country, you may be used to your ways. You may have a, bigger support system, and you may be dependent on that. Whereas living abroad and managing your studies at the same time builds that adaptability and gives you that independence to do things well. It also gives you the exposure to different perspectives, which both in your personal and professional life, which will then, encourage growth in you as a person. And of course, having that experience of staying in a different country and getting a degree, it builds resilience, which is something that the employers also look for in their employees. They want to know if you are able to sustain in different environments, if you are able to multitask. So these are all ways of developing those skills as well. Of course, all of this also improves your career prospects. Being in a research environment, being in a well known university, it builds your alumni network, it gives you access to their career services. When you are in a PhD program, you start interacting with peers who are working in the same field from different universities, from different parts of the world. So, all of that improves your chances of getting a job also. Now, let me talk about the popular destinations. So, most of the times, when the students that we counsel, the students that we come across, generally US is their first choice of country where they want to go. US is also one of the countries where the PhD rules are a little more easier, in the sense that you don't necessarily need to have a master's to do a PhD program. It is, of course, recommended that you have a master's because it makes your transition into the research life easier. And it also reduces the amount of coursework that you have to do if you have a master's. Okay. Um, Countries like Canada requires a master's degree if you want to continue on to a PhD program. There again, it takes 4 to 5 years to complete the program, in which about the first 2 years will require you to complete some coursework, which will be related to the research that you will be later on doing. Now, the other countries, that is, when I talk about Europe or when I talk about Australia or Singapore, I'm going to bundle them all in as other countries, simply because their requirements are more or less the same. Now, what happens here is, looking for a PhD position is essentially like looking for a job. You have to find if there is a vacancy in a research group, which is published on various websites like Find PhD and things like that, or even in the university websites itself, where if there is a opening for a PhD student in a lab or a research group, it is actually published just like a job application, and then you have to apply for that with the necessary documents. Now, here obviously the match has to be very good, in the sense you need not have worked on that exact requirement that they have posted, but you need to have the necessary skills, that so that from day one you are able to jump into that research position. So this is a little more tedious and time consuming for you to actually look, and there is no specific deadline as to when that position will come out. So because there is very less coursework that is involved in these countries for a PhD program, most of the times they will prefer that the student has already completed a master's and then coming into a PhD program. So the course requirements are very less. And they will also look for students who have a strong research background so that from day one, they are able to jump into a research program. Okay. So that is the difference between the countries. Now, I'll talk a little more in detail about each of those countries in the subsequent slides. Let's move ahead. Now, what are the requirements? First, let me talk about the general requirements that you need to apply for a PhD. Academic grades, obviously, the first and foremost is having good grades. Having said that, doesn't mean that if you have lower grades in your master's program, it is going to rule you out of the PhD admissions. No, but it just means that you have to make sure that the other things that are there as part of your profile really boost your profile. So it's important to have good academic grades. Previous research work. Now, this I'm going to talk together about previous research work and papers published because they are kind of related. Now, obviously, the best way to showcase any research experience that you have is in the form of publications. So, first and foremost, if you're currently a master's student, you have to make sure that you have at least a few publications when you go into and apply for a PhD program. Now, it is not necessary that you need to have them published. You could also have submitted them for publication and they may be under review. That is fine too. But there has to be some way of showing the admissions committee that you have the necessary experience, research work and experience, and that can be easily shown by publishing papers. Now, what happens if you don't have any publications? Does that mean that you can't apply for a PhD? No. I will also tell you in the subsequent slides what happens if you have no publication. So please hang on to that. Projects undertaken. Now, sometimes your PhD may not be theoretical, it may be more practical. In that case, if you have done any projects that are related to the work that you're going to do, that will also help. So that can be in the form of internships, any type of project that you did during your college years, or if you worked somewhere, in a lab or something like that, even that can be counted as a project that you have undertaken. uh, I put thesis here. This is because if you are a master student, then definitely having a thesis shows that you have done good amount of research. You have that necessary skills. You have the background. You are exposed to the research field. You know how to write up a thesis and so on. So that will also become a part of your application package. Co-curricular activities. Now, here again, these are activities that you have done in addition to whatever you studied. So while it is important that you maintain good grades, it is also important to show that you have done something beyond the required curriculum and you have taken place in activities. The other part is extracurricular activities are also encouraged because they show that, you are able to multitask and that you have a different facet of your, it showcases a different facet of your personality. So it is important to showcase all of these in your PhD application. The last two things and quite important things are the letters of recommendation and the essays. Now, letters of recommendation, see, because you are an international student applying to universities far away from home, there is very less chance that they're going to ask to visit the university before they give you a formal offer. Many universities these days are conducting interviews, but even to get to that interview stage, you need to have cleared a couple of stages before admission in the admission process. Now, the one way where they actually weed out students or they choose students is by looking at their letters of recommendation. And now, why do they do that? While all the things that you present in your application package are something that you have done and you have prepared, they are looking for somebody external, somebody who is an expert in the field to vouch for your credibility. They are looking for somebody who has worked with you. So, for example, if you're a master's student, Your master supervisor or your advisor is definitely a very good recommender that you should have, who can vouch for your work ethic, who can vouch for your research work, who can vouch that, okay, this is a good candidate to have as a PhD student. So that is one example. If you're not a master's student and you are a bachelor student who is trying to apply for a PhD, then in that case, your college professors. Uh, but again, the letter of recommendation has to be tailored for a PhD program, saying that the necessary quality that is needed to complete a PhD program is there in this student. So these are things that the admissions committee is looking for by an expert in the field, by somebody who knows you professionally, not personally. So, it can be your academic advisors, it can be your university professors, your internship managers, your master's advisors, your manager if you are working, and so on. Okay, so that is what is there about letters of recommendation. Now, a strong SOP or essays. Now, this is very, very important. So, because why? Again, it gives a peek into your career so far to the admissions committee. It basically understands your motivation to do this work. It is your motivation. First of all, it talks about your motivation as to why you chose a particular field, how you got into it, and once you got into it, what did you do? Did you, face any challenges? If you did, how did you overcome that? And how did you work? And lastly, you want to end the essays by saying that if you become a PhD student in that particular university, how are you going to contribute? So while you are going to gain a degree by working with them and by reap the benefits of their established program, they also want to know what are they getting in return. So you need to be able to clearly identify and say, okay, this is how I can contribute to your university. So these are all things that have to be included in the essays that you write for your application. Now, I've written only one SOP here, but many times, especially these days, because it's getting more and more competitive and with so many students applying, the universities have started asking for multiple essays. They ask for a letter of motivation, especially in Europe. In the US, they ask for an SOP. In addition to that, they'll ask for a research essay. Some universities also ask for a brief research proposal. So all of these things, you need to have material to put into each of these essays, and they can't be repetitive. You cannot say give the same information in all your essays. So you need to be able to identify, okay, this is what this I need to write here, this is what I need to write here, and so on. So that is a very important aspect of your application. Okay, now let's talk about the PhD in various countries. So quickly, I'm going to run through these slides a little bit because I have much more information to give. Basically, like I told you the general gist, US is one country where you can apply for a PhD with just a bachelor's program. Of course, it's very competitive, but it doesn't restrict you from application. UK, on the other hand, gives you a direct PhD even after your bachelor's program at times. But what happens is they package it as a MPhil or a master's research program first, wherein the 1 year or 2 years is spent in doing the research, and then you actually go on to a PhD program. So it's kind of all integrated. You may think that you're doing a PhD program directly, but most of the times you will have to do considerable amount of coursework, and you may be able to get a master's out of it before you go in for a PhD. The duration is also shorter, and the cost is also relatively less. PhD in Canada is a very structured program. You need, in addition to having a master's, you also need to have contacted the professors beforehand, and one or two of the professors should have said, okay, I am ready to take you on as a student. Only then it makes sense to apply to the university. So, in fact, in your application, it actually asks, have you got any supervisor to consent your, has any supervisor looked at your profile and things like that? So that really makes a difference. So you need to make sure that you are able to do this kind of work for Canada first. PhD in Germany. Now, this is the nice thing about Germany. What happens is, like I said, it's a job application. If you get a PhD, to get a PhD, it's essentially like looking for a job. So you have to scout the university websites. You have to look at the various common web portals where universities will post their requirements and then apply for the program. So that's why in PhD program length, I put that it depends on your research, because depends on how much time your research takes, that's how long it will be to take your PhD, get your PhD. And there is very minimal coursework involved. From day one you jump into a research program right away. The cost I've written almost free. Again, most of the PhD programs, because they are like a job application and there is a thorough vetting process. What happens is, if you get selected, then your basically tuition is covered as well as a stipend is offered. Hence, I have put that the cost of the PhD program is almost free. Okay. We talked a little bit about the PhD in US already. It takes about 5 to 6 years. In US, there is also the additional requirement of clearing your qualifiers. So what happens is, if you have completed your master's and then you are applying for a PhD program in the US, after your first year of your PhD program, you'll still be required to take a few courses. You will be writing an exam called as the qualifying exam. Once you clear the qualifying exam, only then you become an official PhD candidate. Okay. Now, if you are not done your master's and you're going in as a bachelor student, you have to then do 2 years of coursework, which is essentially a master's degree, and then take the qualifying exams. Now, the reason why you need to take the coursework to do the qualifying exams is because the material on the qualifiers are related to the courses that you have taken during the first and second year of your program. So that's why it's important to take those courses and study for these exams very well. They are basically like entrance exams. And only when you clear them, the university officially makes you a PhD candidate. Now, if you have taken the qualifiers multiple times, and you have not been able to clear it, most of the universities then they have a limit on the number of times you can take it. And then they'll have a chat with the student, and if they feel that a PhD is not going to be possible for them, they will then give them an option to take a master's program and leave the master's degree and leave the program. Okay. So it's extremely important that you're able to clear your qualifiers. One thing I do want to point out, again, here in the US, we have seen that most of the times, if you're selected for a PhD program, you do get assistantship and tuition waiver as part of the deal. What we have observed in the last few years is many students think that instead of applying for a master's, they will apply for a PhD program. And then, they'll do the 2 years and they will then decide that they're not going to continue further. Now, this was very common about a few years ago, and it was also being done widely. But now that is not the case. Universities are aware of these things. So what they do is, if you decide to quit the program after doing enough credits for a master's program, they actually don't give you a master's either. So please don't be under the impression that I want to go, but I want to go for a fully funded program, so I'm going to do whatever it takes. Go there, finish enough credits for a master's, and then decide to get away with the master's. There is always a chance that the university will realize this and will not let you do this. This will then not only cause problems for you with respect to your visa status, because you will be an international student, plus you would have spent the time and not gotten a degree. So make sure that your priorities are very clear and that you are very sure that you want to do a PhD program before you get into this. PhD in Singapore is, again, the length of the PhD is 2 to 5 years. Now, I've written two because, again, most of the times it's towards the 5 year mark. 2 years is, very few programs allow you are able to finish within 2 years. And again, same requirements. You need to have a master's. Again, very competitive because the number of universities in Singapore are less and they are all top ranked. So they are very, very competitive in accepting students. PhD in Australia. Here, again, you will apply for the program. Australia has one of the most relaxed rules for post work thing, and also on campus work and off campus work and things like that. But what happens is the universities don't want you to do work outside than your PhD program. They essentially want a candidate who is fully committed to the PhD program. So most of the times when you get an admit from an Australian university, you will get with funding. But to get to that point, you have to go through couple of levels of interviews. So the way it would work is once you submit your application is circulated to the admissions committee in the university, and each of those committees will have certain amount of funding available to them in which they can recruit a student. So you have to be one of the best, and during your interview process you have to be able to articulate clearly as to why you want to do a PhD, how you're going to do the program, your research skills, and show all that has to be showcased very well, and you have to impress the committee. Only then you even get an offer for a PhD. Okay. Okay, now let's talk about intake seasons and timelines. Now, here, like I said, for the Europe countries, most of the times there is no specific deadline, because it's like a job application. When they have a need, they post it, and as soon as they find a student, they want you to join. So of course there are some deadlines that you will have to maintain, but those are, depends on the universities and things like that. But in general, I'm specifically more so talking about the US Canada here. You have two intakes, August December and January May, known as the fall and the spring intakes, and you then have to apply based on the timeline. So let me talk about the timeline here. Now, like I said, while I have a timeline here, there is a lot of groundwork and research that you have to do before you decide to apply. So all of these things that you do, the research, the school research, taking the GRE if you're going to the US, and all of that has to start at least 18 months to 24 months before when you actually want to go. Okay. So for example, if you're doing a master's program, as you're doing your master's program, simultaneously you have to start looking for options what happens after the master's program. So as you're doing research in your master's program, simultaneously you must be looking at other professors in universities abroad who are working on similar research, and start trying to interact and connect with them or follow them closely, so that when the time comes for you to apply, you have some contacts, you have some supervisor approvals, and so on. Okay, so this is a general timeline. You can screenshot this if you like. But basically, you will need to do the school research, the GRE, the English language exams, gathering material for your essays, and all of that before the application season. In the month of September, October, if you are targeting August of next year, the previous year, September and October, you have to start finalizing your documents. You will then start applying to universities in the months of October to Jan. Now, many universities in the US, for example, have PhD deadlines much ahead of the master's deadlines. So you want to make sure you get into the early deadlines and not wait for the regular deadlines. Once you have submitted your application, you will then start receiving admissions. And after that, once you have received your admissions, you see which is the most interesting option for you. And once you do that, you start working on the visa processes. So that is the general timeline that you need to follow. Okay. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about how to choose your universities. Okay. Many times when I talk to students, or when my team talks to the students, what they want to do is, if you ask the students what do you want to go, everybody wants to go into the top universities. Now that is perfectly okay that you want to go to the top universities. What I'm trying to say is, a PhD is a research program. So, should you focus on the university ranking, or should you look at the research group? This is a very important question that you guys need to think back and decide first. What you need to do is, more than the ranking, you need to look at the research fit. You need to be able to see that the university that you want to go to has a strong department that is doing the research in your interest in your area. Now, remember, this is a research that you are going to work on for 4 to 5 years. So, obviously, if there are not many options available over there, you should really think about whether you want to go to that university, even though its ranking is very high. Okay. So, this is a very important question that I tell students, that no matter which degree you're going to, you have to be able to enjoy what you're learning because you have decided that you want to go. Nobody is forcing you to do this. So, in that case, it's always important that you go into a program that you are really going to like, that you are going to enjoy and study, and that you are able to work in that after you finish your degree, right? So if you just look at the ranking and decide to go, yes, your options, your career as prospects are better because the university is ranked higher and so on. But what happens if you go into a program where it is not well established, where the research in that area that you are going into is not well established? What happens if the supervisor that you're working with in that department is not well funded? He is not able to give, going to give you funding, so then you have to pay from your pocket for that degree. So these are some of the questions that you have to keep in mind. The second thing you have to realize is, by looking at the rankings that are published by some organizations, there are many factors that are taken into account. It takes into account things like student faculty ratio. It takes into account things like how many students attend the university, what is the yield rate, and those kind of things. Now, all of those things don't matter to a PhD student. A PhD student has to focus on research, has to focus on his or her supervisor, has to focus on the research group that he or she is working with. So it doesn't matter what the student faculty ratio is, what are the facilities available in the university, other facilities other than what you need. So that is why it's very important to look more at the research fit and look into the research group and the supervisor that you want to work with before you look at the university ranking. Okay. Now, one more thing I want to highlight over here is looking at the how will you find your supervisor. So I've been talking about supervisor, I've been talking about advisor for a few minutes now. How do you actually find them? Now, here's what you need to do. Obviously, the easiest way is to start with university websites. Now, to start with university websites, you will need to know which universities to look at. So, one option is take your research program that you are interested in, some keywords from that research, and do a Google search. That will spit out a lot of information on which universities and which faculty in those universities are working in that area. Then you can start looking into more detail, like, oh, okay, this university has this professor who's working in this research. You can then start looking into that site. Then from that professor's site, you can start looking at his or her publications. When you look at his or her publications, you will get an idea about the kind of research they are doing. Once you do that, you will be able to see the co-authors on those publications. When you look at the co-authors on those publications, they may be affiliated with different universities. So again, that again widens your reach. So this is how you will start looking for a supervisor. Okay. You can also use academic search tools like Google Scholar, where you are able to check recent papers by potential supervisors. ResearchGate shows you what are the projects that the experts are currently working on, and it also shows their network. LinkedIn is definitely a great place to follow. All of you should have your own LinkedIn profiles where you are able to keep your profiles updated. At the same time, you will need to follow people who are in your field so that you are in line with the current research that is happening. Many faculty are quite active on LinkedIn as well. They post about their research, they post about their student successes. So that also gives you an idea. Okay. The other thing I do want to point out is, when you do this kind of work, you may know of a few people, few professors who are very famous in that field. Again, great if you get a chance to work with them, but don't limit your options and say that I'm only going to work with them. But you may work, your research interest may be similar to what they are doing, but it may not be exactly what you want to do. So again, don't pick somebody as a supervisor just because they are famous. Make sure that your interest is aligning with them completely. So as you can see that the whole point of this process to get to this point where you're able to find a supervisor and connect with them is a little bit of a soul searching process. You have to introspect a little, you have to know clearly what is the research you're doing. Now, if you don't know, that doesn't mean that you can't do it. It's just that your starting point is going to be very basic. You will have to take some time to go into the university once you get an admit, look at the different research that is being done in the sciences. Many universities offer you the option to do lab rotations, where every month you can go to a different lab, work in that lab, and see if you like the research, and then at the end of the first year you can decide which lab you want to be associated with. So these are the kind of options that you have. So I hope I have given you some ideas on where to start. Okay. I actually also want to give you an example again about university versus research fit. Okay. So now you say if you have, this is, I'm just giving you an example of how the logic flows. It doesn't mean that a particular university is not good or a particular university is very good. I'm just giving you a general information based on our years of experience. So, for example, if you have a student who is interested in renewable energy, who wants to do a PhD in that area, but he or she has a specific interest in solar cell materials. Okay. Now, if you do a Google search, all of these universities, and I picked just two randomly here, University of Cambridge and New South Wales. All of these are going to show up in your research. Now, when you dig deeper, you're going to find out that University of Cambridge has a very diverse area of research in renewable energy. They focus on wind energy, bioenergy, and policy frameworks and so on. But they don't specifically work on solar cells. Whereas UNSW has a specific program for that, and they are globally renowned for their solar cell development. So, in this case, what happens is a student who is very focused on working with solar cells will be a better fit for UNSW. Now, even though the ranking, if you see, it's number 2 and number 19, in my opinion, if a student is very keen on the research they want to do, then they should pick the University of New South Wales. So, this is the kind of analysis that you should do when you are looking for a program. Okay, I hope that is clear. Again, like I said, it doesn't mean that uh, Cambridge is not, obviously, it's number 2. So it is a very good university. I'm just saying that while the ranking is very high, it may not be exactly what you are looking for. So that is the kind of decisions you will have to make. Okay, let me give you an example. Say I have another student who is looking for applied machine learning research, and he or she is specifically interested in agricultural and environmental science. Now, why I'm talking so specific about a research is because that is what a PhD is. You go into very detail about a specific part. You don't do a very high level research. You're going to do very intricate and very detailed oriented work. So you will go into details like this. Now, here again, obviously, all of you know Stanford. Now, number 3 globally ranked, very strong core in machine learning, if you see, and we also know that, and lot of being in the Silicon Valley area, it has a lot of tie-ups and everything, so very well. But what we have seen is that they have less emphasis on applied machine learning, specifically to agriculture and environmental science. So these are things, they have smaller labs and they have fewer dedicated projects first. Whereas UIUC, which is again, not so highly ranked, it's number 85, which is still a good QS ranking, is has something called as the National Center for Compute Supercomputing Applications, and where they specifically focus on machine learning projects for agriculture, precision farming, and so on. So again, a student who is very interested in this very niche program may be a better fit in UIUC. Of course, then it's a matter of decision. Anybody who gets an admit to Stanford will not say I don't want to go there, but these are the kind of decisions that you may have to make. So I just want to make sure that you guys understand what I mean when I say research fit. Okay. Now, the other thing I also want to talk about, which many students don't know or they are not very clear on how to go about, is how to find these potential supervisors. So once you have found the potential supervisors, like I said in a couple of slides before, you need to start contacting them. Now, there is no guarantee that they are going to respond to you. So it is very important that when you contact them via email or LinkedIn or anything, you make your profile interesting enough that they are intrigued by it and they actually respond to. So whenever you contact them, obviously you should not talk a lot about yourself because that is not going to work, right? But you have to actually discuss on how you came about their profile and how you are interested in their research and how you can contribute to it. Okay, so you have to send concise emails. Again, please personalize the emails, or do not send the same email to hundreds of professors by putting their IDs in BCC. That is not going to work. You need to personalize each and every email for the person you send to. Okay, you need to talk about who you are and why you are writing. That is, you have to give a nice story on how you got interested in their work, what intrigued about what interested you in their work, what was the point that you saw. Okay, maybe a recent publication from them, maybe a recent research highlight from or news from them that made you interested in their work. And then you also have to show how your research interest aligns with the research that they are already doing. Okay, so that is how you will approach a professor, a potential supervisor. You have to make sure that the emails are not very long because um, all the professors get tons of emails and they are not going to have a lot of time to read through it. So you have to give a very concise email which highlights your profile very nicely, but at the same time doesn't make it very long and boring. And you can then attach your CV or your resume along with the email, so that if they are interested in your email, then they'll go back and check the attachment that you have sent. So this is how you have to approach professors. And like I said, all of this takes time. If you have to say email 50 professors, this is just a number that I'm giving because you don't know how many of them are going to respond to you. So if you have to email 50 professors and if you have to personalize the emails to all of them, you may not be able to do one or two in a day. You may not be able to do more than one or two in a day. But you also have to have got this list of 50 professors before you start doing this work. So that is why that research work, that time spent on looking at everybody's research, looking at whether your interests are matching their interests, whether you are interested in working in a lab that they are supporting, and things like that becomes very important. So this is some work that you guys have to start doing very early on. And again, unfortunately, this is not work that you can outsource to someone because your research work or your interests are known only to you. So you have to be able to do this. What you can always do is, say for example, you're already doing some research work, say you're a master's student doing some research work, you can check with your current advisor whom they, because they also may be aware of other peers in their research in their area. You can ask them. They may tell you that, oh, professor working in MIT is very good, so you can reach out to them. A professor working in University of Michigan Ann Arbor is very good, you can reach out to them. Or TU Munich is very good. So that's how you will develop the contacts. Again, if you are currently in the research area, make sure you're attending conferences. There again, you will interact, you will attend sessions, you will meet people, faculty from different universities, and you can talk to them. They may be interested in your research, they may ask you to contact them later. So those are the kind of options you can also start with instead of starting without any information. Okay, I hope again this is clear and helpful to you guys. Now, this is another question that I do want to address. Many times when students come to us, they say that, oh, I really want to do a PhD, but I don't have any publications. What should I do? Now, it's not the end of the world that if you don't have a publication, it doesn't necessarily mean that you can't do a PhD. Publications, like I said earlier, is one easy way to showcase or demonstrate your research skills to the world. But if you don't have it, obviously it's not easy getting a publication. You have to go through rounds of submission, rounds of approvals, rounds of review and editing and things like that. So it is a big task to get a publication. So what happens if you don't have? There are a lot of other ways where you can showcase your research, and I've listed some ways here. For example, you could start volunteering somewhere where there is ongoing research. So either in your university, or your university may be tied up with some lab or some group, you can start going and volunteering there. You can definitely do internships. If you're in a research program, in a master's program, you can assist faculty in writing research proposals. While that is not actually publishing, but it gives you that experience of writing a research proposal, which is something that you will have to do as a PhD student. You can There are many websites where you are asked to review literature. Peer-to-peer literature is reviewed, so you can sign up for that. You can start doing some data analysis for these kind of review work. You can respond to blogs nowadays. A very common thing that is happening is many people write a lot of scientific blogs, and I've listed some names here. You'll also be able to Google and find out a whole bunch of blogs in your area of interest, and you can start contributing there. In fact, there very intelligent responses and scientific related responses are welcomed to the by the public. So if you are in that area, you can start contributing there. And obviously, somebody is moderating and reading those comments. So if somebody who is reading your comments finds them interesting and wants to strike up a conversation, then they will connect with you. So those are the ways you can make sure that your work is also showcased. So if you see a blog which is related to your area of interest, and you can always say, oh, I have worked on something similar, this is what I encountered. So those kind of things will again help somebody to see that, okay, you know what you're talking about, kind of a thing. Active participation in social media, here again I'm specifically more so talking about LinkedIn. Following the right people, making sure you are able to contribute intelligently when somebody posts something. Those are the kind of things that you can focus on. Again, you can look for opportunities to present to schools and universities, where they'll invite you to present their research, your research and things like that, in order to pass on information to other generations and so on. So this is something that you can do. Cold emailing, anyway, instead of waiting to the point where you have decided to do your PhD and then starting to email professors, you can always start cold emailing authors of papers. So for example, if you read a paper as part of your curriculum, and then you are really interested in it, if you are really interested in that work, you can always reach out to that author of the paper and say, I did this. And then if you had some questions, you could ask about that. Or if you thought that the author should have approached the problem in a different way, you can also mention that in your email. So those are the kind of things that shows that you have actually thought about what they have written. They may or may not reply, but that is a chance that you have to take. So do keep this in mind, and don't think that you have to have publications to apply for a PhD. Yes, it does make your case stronger, but these are some of the other things also that you can do, and then that can be showcased as part of your application package as well. Okay, so now that I've talked so much about what you can do, I also want to quickly touch upon what happens when you actually enroll in a PhD program. So, like most of the times, other than where you're going into a research based program, like in the Europe, you will start with coursework to acquaint yourself with the coursework that is needed. You will work with a research advisor. In the sciences, you will do a lab or complete lab rotations and so on. Once you have done this, in the US, you will have to write the qualifying exam and clear that. Once you have cleared the qualifying exam, you will be writing a research proposal. Now, this is where you will talk about your idea of research, what you are going to do in your PhD research. And once that research proposal is written up, you will have to present it to your committee and get an approval, and that is called as a proposal defense. Only once you have cleared that, you become an official PhD student, and then you start working on the research. Now, during your PhD years, you will start networking with researchers in your field. You will read their work, get ideas, see what worked, what didn't work, adapt that to your own research, and that's how you. Now, the one thing that I always tell students is, as soon as you start your PhD research, you need to make sure that you're constantly submitting papers to conferences and journals. So start with conferences because they are a little easier to get accepted in. Once you have a conference paper in, then you can, add on to it a little more and then publish it send it for publication to a journal. Okay. So you need to make sure that during the course of your PhD, you're constantly trying to publish in conferences and journals. Finally, when you're done with your entire research, you have to give a final presentation, which is called as the oral defense exam, as well as write a dissertation, which is then again approved by the committee, and that's when you're officially given the PhD degree. Okay. So this is the general overview of the PhD process that happens abroad. Now, I do also want to talk about a little bit on the personal side of it. Um, like I said, it's a very personal research that happens. While you may be working with a lab and a group, there is a lot of individual work that is there because you are gaining your PhD individually. You're not gaining it as a lab. So even though if you're in a lab of 10 students, everybody has their own research. No two students are working on the same project, so you have to have your own ideas. You have to come up with your own ideas. You can, of course, interact with people and get ideas, but you have to apply it to your own work. So at times, what happens is because it's a long process, because it's a 4 to 5 year process, it can get a little isolated. So that is where it is very important that in addition to doing your work, you are also maintaining healthy relationships outside your PhD. Okay. You need to be able to balance your research coursework as well as have some kind of a social life so that you are not completely bogged down by the PhD. You also have to understand that PhD is something that it can go either way. As in, you may be doing research on something for 1 year, and after a year, you may realize that you have gone down the wrong path. Or whatever you have done is not going to yield any results. Now, that's okay. That is why it's called research, right? Because you are actually looking to see whether it works or not. So, even if you have negative results, that can also be included as part of your dissertation. It shows that you went down this path, and by publishing that, somebody else who is going to follow you is going to realize that, oh, I can't do this. So that is why it is very important for you also to do a lot of research before you decide to take a specific path in your research. Okay. um Other than that, because it's a long process, you have to celebrate small wins. Like, if you're given the option to present a poster, if you're given the option to go present in a local school, if you are submitting a paper and so on, if you're able to attend a conference because you are a PhD student, these are the kind of things that will help you also enjoy the journey. The one more thing that I want to say is it is something that you have decided to do. So, unlike when you were in grad school or undergraduate school or in school where you were given deadlines, you were told you have to finish this work by this date, you have to submit it at this time. No, here you set your milestones. So that is why sometimes the PhD program is as short as 4 years, sometimes it's as long as 7 years. It entirely depends on how motivated you are, how quickly you are able to find the result. So you have to set deadlines for yourself. Of course, you have to set realistic deadlines. If you say that I'm going to finish my PhD in 3 years and you don't, then you are in for some disappointment. So these are some of the things that you guys have to work, you will have to work on. So while it is an enriching journey professionally, it also makes sure that personally there is a lot of growth in a person. And of course, there are at times when you will have some setbacks, but that again is a life lesson. So I just want to touch upon this also, from something that you guys should consider, that it is a long investment. So you have to be able to ready to give that time to yourself and make sure that you are able to focus on it properly. So I do wanted to mention that as well. Okay, visa process again varies from each country to country, but basically, if you are an international student, you will need a student visa to go and study in that country. Basic documents are, of course, an admit letter, valid passport. If you're doing the US, then you will need to do an I-20. All the countries will need financial documents if you don't have a scholarship offered. And then, of course, there are certain country specific documents. For example, in Germany, you will need the APS certificate. Some other countries, you need to have very specific documents that they will ask you for. So all of that you will get help with. Visa appointment letter, and of course, if you have if you're going for the US, you will have to go in for an interview. If you're going for the other countries, you will need an appointment to go drop off your papers at the consulate and so on. Okay, so I want to end the session by quickly showing you a few of our success stories. I have Hridabrata, who is doing a PhD in electrical and computer engineering science at MIT. If you look at her research internships, while she had an excellent GPA and GRE score, if you look at her research fellowship, she's done a fellowship at RWTH Aachen, again a very top university in Germany. She's also done one in NTU Singapore. So all related to her field, but also in the top universities, obviously, which is what has helped her in getting a degree in MIT. Tazim is from Bangladesh. He has again good GRE score and good GPA. A lot of relevant experience. He had completed his master's in industrial and production engineering. Currently doing his PhD at University of Texas Arlington, which is it's a fully funded PhD program. Muskan, a very interesting story. She is just completed her first year of her PhD program. She actually has a bachelor's from Hungary, and she had applied for a master's program, but the university really liked her profile and wanted her as one of the professors wanted her as a PhD candidate. So they offered her a PhD admit. And she was happy to do it because at some point in her life, she did want to do a PhD. So a lot of discussions, she had with us about whether it is a right program for her, what she should do, and things like that. And finally, decided to go in for a PhD at RIT. Navya has currently doing her PhD in chemistry. Again, good GPA, average GRE score again because it's a research program in the sciences. Sometimes they don't require the GRE, so we do advise students to take it if we think it will help. But at the same time, if they get a lower score or if they don't take it, it's not going to hinder their chances completely. So here she has got again a tuition waiver along with a teaching assistantship. She's currently pursuing her PhD at University of Notre Dame. Saurdeep is at Penn State, again a top college of engineering. He's actually getting a PhD in chemistry there. He has a background in civil and environmental engineering, and he's currently doing a related program. So he's kind of switched his careers a little bit, but he's currently doing a PhD at Penn State. Triya is doing a PhD in imaging science. She has a bachelor's in physics, and she's doing her PhD at RIT. Okay, so that is the end of our session. Quickly to give you an idea on how Galvanize can help you. When you enroll with us, we will understand your profile, and based on your profile interests and this, we will recommend universities. In addition to that, we will assist you with the drafting of the essays. Once you have your applications done and get your admits, we will also assist you with the visa and the financing and some pre-departure services. We also offer test prep help, as you can see in the screen here. So these are some advantages of our test prep programs. Okay, so if you have any questions, let me just look at the chat box. But Sahil would have posted a form link which you guys can fill to get a completely free profile evaluation done. So please do fill out that form, and study abroad expert will contact you right away. Okay, so I have a question from Abhijoy, who's asked, what do you mean by a good academic score? What score is meant good? I meant so anything ideally for on a scale of 4, I would say anything about 3.5 is what I would consider as a good academic score. Having said that, if you are below that, doesn't mean that you are not eligible. It is a holistic process. Because you're applying for a PhD, they look at your entire background. They look at whether you are able to show research experience, and even if your scores are less, but it kind of depends on why your scores are less. If you are able to then talk about why your scores were less, but if you have a very good research background, then that makes up for it. Okay, so unless your CGPA is extremely low, like below 2, it should not cause problems. Any other questions?
Guys, if you have any questions, please post in the chat box and we are here to take. So, okay, Yoginder has just raised his hand. I'll just unmute him so you can ask your question. Guys can also raise your hands so I can unmute you and you can ask the questions directly to Jayanti ma'am.
Okay, I have a question from Samuel, who's asked if he can apply to multiple faculties in the same university in the US, for example, civil engineering and computer science application to the university. Very good question. You can apply to the multiple faculties in the same university, but you will need to have a connect with them. For example, you're talking about civil engineering and computer science, so you will need to make sure that whatever your background is, uh, makes a logical application to civil engineering as well as computer science. Of course, you have to modify your email to them accordingly, but as long as you are able to make a case for yourself, there is nothing against in applying to multiple faculties in the same university. Okay, so Prasida has asked me about the cost. Yes, so the cost that I had given on the slides are basically a range of amounts that will have to pay if you don't get any funding. Ideally, you don't want to do a PhD without funding. So if you are able to get assistantship and a tuition waiver, then the fee from your pocket is going to be extremely less. It will be a few dollars or few euros based on, like, administrative fee and things like that. Ideally, the when you are a fully funded student, your entire tuition will be taken care of, and your living expenses will be paid in the form of a stipend, which then you can use for your rent and utilities. The numbers that I have given up there are basically just to give you a range of what it will actually cost if you don't have a fund. I also want to point out that ideally it is better that you go for a PhD program which is fully funded, and that's why do the necessary groundwork to get that fully funded program. Simply because even if you have the financial means to do a PhD program out of pocket, that is, you have the money or you take a loan and you're able to do it. When you after you finish the PhD, when you try to look for a job, or you try to get an academia position, or you try to get a postdoc position, it is there is always a question on why you didn't get a funded program. Were you may be a very good candidate, but did the university not think that you are a good candidate? So it kind of, when some professor is ready to pay your tuition fee and also give you a monthly stipend to do research for him, it shows that the professor has faith in your profile and in your work. So it is always better that you wait for a fully funded program as opposed to trying to pay for a PhD program from your pocket. Any other questions?
So there's a question from Mr. Ankit. So he
Hmm.
wanted to know how much stipend will be given by US university, and for mechanical engineering, which country will be the better choice?
Okay. So the stipend will depend in the US universities. It will normally depend on the area where your university is. For example, if you go to a university in Texas, the cost of living is lower. So you will get a stipend in the range of $2,000 per month. In addition, the tuition waiver is something that is actually taken care of by the university. So you will get like around $2,000 or so. Whereas if you go somewhere in California or in the East Coast, then you may get something in the range of $3,500. And so these are very general numbers that I'm giving you based on what our students have got in the past. So it will be very specific to the university. There is no standard this saying that this is what the stipend is going to be. It will entirely depend on the university, the program, how well funded it is, and the cost of living in that university. So that is what you will have to take into account.
So there's a what to say? Srivatsa Karthik is raised his hand. I'll just unmute you. You can ask your question. Hi Srivatsa, you can now unmute and ask your question.
Yeah, thank you. So, good evening, ma'am. It's a great lecture to sit through. Uh, Thanks a lot for that. I just want to know how relevant is my, high school score and my,
Sorry, Ankit, we are not able to hear you. Sorry, Karthik, we are not able to hear you.
undergraduate GPA. And I'm applying for, say, yeah. So, am I audible now?
Yeah, you're
Yeah,
audible.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. No, I just want to know how relevant my high school scores and undergraduate CGPA would be for, applying for a PhD abroad in a somewhat high-ranked university.
Okay. Have you done your masters already?
No, I'm just going to start it this year.
Okay, so high school scores are not going to matter. You
Yeah.
don't, nobody asks for that. Undergraduate, they will ask for the GPA, but it is not, if you're doing a master's, it is not going to, I mean, that is not going to be used as a criteria for any selection process. The
Okay.
undergraduate GPA will be needed for you to show that you have completed your undergraduate degree, as long as it is not very low.
Hmm.
Say for example, out of 10, it is 7.58. All that is a good GPA if you're doing a master's. If you're an undergrad student who is directly applying for a PhD, then the GPA definitely matters. But in this
Okay.
case, what will happen is, if you're doing your master's at the time of your application, you would have completed 1 year of your master's. So you will be in your third semester. So you will have 3 years of GPA to show. So that is enough
Hmm.
for the application process. As long as that is above 3.5, you are good to go.
Okay. Yeah.
3.5 out of
Sure.
4. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Srivatsa. We have Ankit who has now raised his hand. So I'll just unmute him. Yes, Ankit, you can now unmute yourself and ask a question. Ankit, you can unmute now. Uh, Yes, Ankit, you can ask your question.
Is I'm audible?
Yes.
Yeah. So, ma'am, actually, I'm in my current final year of my master thesis.
Hmm.
Work in the carbon quantum dots, and I have applied more than 20 positions for my PhD abroad.
Okay.
I have got only one reply for my interview, that is from the University of Manchester.
Hmm.
But I was not selected for that position just because my background is not matching with any application. Like I was applying in solar cells, but
Hmm.
my background was in carbon quantum water treatment.
Okay.
So in every position, I was getting rejections. So what we can do in that case?
So you said your background, what did you say it is in carbon?
My background is in nanomaterials in the field of carbon
Materials.
quantum dots in the
Okay.
material science.
Okay. So
So
these
I
these applications that you did, did you make sure that that kind of research was being done in those universities?
no, I checked in the different universities, but my interest was in solar cells. So I wanted to work in the field of solar cells, but my background was not in the field of solar cells.
Ah, okay,
So
understood.
what can I
Okay.
do?
So you have to show that there is some connect. You have to show that, either you said you are in your final year, right? So now you are, since you didn't get any admits now, what you can do is take some time and actually do a pivot and start working in solar cells. Kind of something related to your background, nanomaterials, but how you are able to connect it to solar cells and do a little bit of research in that area. So, like I was telling during the session, because it's a research oriented program, there will be a lot of emphasis on research. So, they don't want you to come there and then start learning about solar cells, and because that is not going to be a, smart investment of their time and money. So, they expect that the student they give the position to is already well versed with those areas. So I'm assuming you applied more to Europe and not to the US, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So US I think is a little more flexible on such things, because in US they give you that bandwidth for a year or so to learn something new. So even if you had the nanomaterial experience and you already have that knowledge, with that you will still be able to get an admit, and after going there then start working on for solar cells and all that. So US gives you that freedom for 1 to 1.5 years to take the courses that are needed to get you ready for research, and then start working on the actual research. They are also more open to admitting students who don't match the background completely, but they see that potential that you can work in any kind of field that is related to your basic field. So either you pivot and start looking at US next, or you kind of start doing some research on, start working with somebody over here who is working on solar cells and things like that. Only then I think you will have any luck in Europe.
Okay, ma'am.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So Jayanti, there are a couple of questions from Ashok Kumar. So
Hmm.
he wanted to know how much CGPA is considered as good CGPA in MTech, and yeah, that's it for now. A good institution or country for mechanical engineering if they want to pursue a PhD.
Okay. Mechanical engineering, US is there, Germany is there. These are some of the good countries that you can pursue for that. Singapore is there. Good GPA, again, base criteria is, I would say 3.5 out of 4. You can convert that. I think it comes out to 8.5 or 9. I'm not sure. But basically, again, it's a very relative thing. If you have very good GPA, but you don't have enough research background, it's not, you may not be a perfect candidate. But if you have a slightly lower GPA, but if you have excellent research experience, then the GPA is not going to matter anymore. So it all is, a game of what you have and what you don't have, kind of a thing. So I would personally say, as long as you have a decent GPA, don't worry so much about the GPA, but more look at what are the other things that are there in your profile. Okay, somebody has asked me a question. Just a second. Okay, so about other Asian countries, I'm not going. Most of the countries like Japan and Korea will offer you English taught programs, so it is not going to be challenge for you to um, get an admit there. I think the challenge will come more with your day to day interaction with the team and the people, because Japan and all, the English speaking is slightly in the university setting. It's still very common to speak English, but you will have to know some language to get by. Korea, on the other hand, is more English speaking, so you will be able to. I getting an admit may not be a problem. What you will have to deal with is not knowing the language entirely will cause a little bit of challenge. The programs will, most of the programs these days, all the countries are doing English taught programs. They may be not as common as other countries, but these countries are also offering English taught programs. Japan is also known to have their own entrance exam. So that is something you will have to take and prepare. So it's very subject specific. So you will have to take that exam to even clear the process, and then the rest of the process stays the same. Okay. Any other questions?
Guys, if you have any other questions, request you to post in the chat box or raise your hands so we can unmute you and ask. You can ask your question to Jayanti. I guess, yeah, Jayanti, we are done. So no more questions.
Yeah. Thank you so much, guys, for attending the session, and I hope you guys found it useful.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for joining. Have a good weekend ahead. Thank you.